or did you just say words to yourself? So words make sense when you can make a movie. You can see, hear, feel that movie in your mind. And then we can explore the qualities of that movie. Is the movie way out there? Or is it really close? Or are you inside the movie? The more you're inside the movie, the more you'll feel the movie. Well, this is State 101 as we think about how we get into states. This gives us two royal roads into state, so that I can get into state by thinking of certain things, and I can get into state by my body. So that gives us two royal roads into a state of something. Later on, we'll play with appreciation. If you wanted to access the state of appreciation, what would you need to see on the movie of your mind? This morning, I got up before dark and ran on the beach and watched the sun come up. It's only the second time in my entire life I've ever done that. 2 days ago, I did that for the first time. And as I watched that sun come up, it gave me a sense of just the magnificence of the sunrise with the clouds and the colors and feeling the breeze from the waves. Are you making a movie? Is it easy to make a movie? So you're not making the visual movie. So if you're not making it visually, are you hearing these words? Could you hear the crashing of the waves? Could you feel the breeze? Could you smell the salt? Could you have a sense of that sun and the brightness? At first it's red, and then it's a little bit orange, and then it's brighter yellow, and it gets brighter. So we make movies in our mind, and sometimes our movies, sometimes there may be no visual, there's just a soundtrack. Just words somewhere in that soundtrack. And of course that puts us into a state of some sort. With regard to state and this awareness, state awareness means we become aware that we're in a state. I never leave home without being in some state. Everywhere I go, I find myself in a state. How about you? What state are you in right now? Good state. And if you were to make that a little bit more specific, are you calm? Are you curious? Are you calm? Receptive? Playful?
Who's curious?
Anybody in a curious state? Anybody in a learning state? Okay, who's in a learning state? So awareness, it's like we can become aware that I'm in a state of mind, body, emotion, and as we become aware of that state, we could get into that state more by our thoughts or by our body. If you were to use your body to put yourself in the most ferocious, intense, powerful learning state, what would you need to do with your body? If you need to shuffle around or set up or move or take your eyes or get out your anchor, I can always get out my anchor for my learning state. So if one of those learnings come by, I'm going to catch it. It helps me to be in a learning state to use that physiology. And for me, setting up, having a little bit more muscle tension helps me. And the eyes just kind of searching, fishing, looking. So from our physiology, we go into state and we recognize it's a mental state, it's an emotional state, it's a somatic state, it's a personal state, an energy field, as it were. Well, the question we can now ask about that energy field is how much? How much do you have that state? How many here has at least a 2 if 10 is absolute, 0 is not a chance in hell, how many have at least a 2 in terms of learning state? How many have at least a 2? Okay. How many have at least a 5? Who can give me a 6? 6? Any 6s? 7? 7? 7? 8s? Going for 8? Anybody above 8? All right, so some of you have really put yourself into a very intense learning state. The question now becomes, how are you doing that? What are you doing inside your head that makes that possible? And those of you who may be at a 4 or 5, somewhere around there, what would you need to do to make it more so? Okay. And that's our discovery. That's what we're going to explore. How do you do that as we become conscious of our states? But the intensity of the state and the gauging is something we're going to be using a lot in the next 3 days, asking how much do you have that? Is that enough intensity? Is that enough energy? Is that enough emotion to do something with that state? So the intensity of a state is another key facet of states. Another facet of states and a part of state management is the ability to access a state. We say in NLP there's 2 ways to access a state. Remember a time when. Have you ever been in a state of appreciation? Have you ever appreciated something? I don't know what you appreciated, but I wonder what you can think about even now as you remember it fully, as you think about something that you just melted in appreciation for something. You ever had one of those?
How many of you have ever been in a state of playfulness where you just had fun with your learning? And what is that like when you're in a state of just playfulness and curiosity about what's going to take place? How many of you have ever had that in your life? Do you like that? Do you enjoy that? Oh, okay.
So as you access that, now some of you will immediately, as it were, the Rolodex of your mind, the videotapes of your mind, you'll just pull out something, see it again, go into it, and feel it fully. But some of us are a little bit more choosy and picky. We kind of go through, and so we go through picking, and by the time the speaker gets done speaking, they're on to something else, and we're still making our choices of which one we want to choose to go into. How fast can you access a thought, a memory, so that you can go into it again and give yourself permission just to feel it? The opposite side is the imagination. I know you have never been playful, but if you were playful like a child again, and just had that smirk on your lips, little mischievous playfulness, and you came to this training a little mischievous in your playfulness, I know you can't, but if you could, what would that be like? So we can imagine. So we have memory and imagination as 2 mechanisms for accessing a state, and we'll be utilizing those because this is just part of state accessing. Who knows about state dependency and what that means and how we use the term? How many know about state dependency? State dependency means that when you get a state and you get it more and more and more and more, after a while, your learning, memory, imagination, communication, behavior is dependent on that state. So like the grumpy person, if they have a lot of it, they see the world in terms of grumpiness. They remember things in terms of grumpiness. They imagine the future full of grumpiness. They talk grumpy. They act grumpy. That their expressions are functions of that state, and so state dependency. So if you've ever been ludicrous, anybody been ludicrous in that state? A couple drinks will do that one. Just go without sleep for a couple days and you can get into a really ludicrous state. Be with some good friends and just have a wonderful time in the evening with some good friends and you can get in that state. And when you're in that state, the world looks ludicrous. And you can be laughing at a lampshade. And the next day when you're in a serious state, you can wonder, I know it was funny, but I can't remember how or why. People who get into the drunk state, the tipsy state is like that. When they're outside and not in the drunk state, but in the sober state, they'll even swear that they didn't do some certain things. Because they'll have amnesia from one state to the other.
How many of you have ever picked up a Michael Hall book and you're reading it? And you're getting it, it's like, yeah, this is what I was looking for. And then the next day you pick it up, you're like, huh? What?
That's not a good illustration.
But it's state. The state you're in determines your learning and your remembering.
So state dependency is really critical in what we're going to do now, because from state dependency we can move into metastates. So we start with one state, and how we bring one state to another state is through that intensity of the state and the energy of the state, so that if I get real playful and I bring my playfulness to my learning,